Connecting. We are connected. Get yourself connected. All right. All right. Let's see if I can pull this up on my Facebook again. There we are. Did it. All right. Well, I only see one person on Facebook so far, but that's probably me. But for those who are watching a recording, I know you'll want to sit here and wait. So, what happened on this day? On this day in history, I've got a few interesting things. Do we know any birthdays? Are there any birthdays that are going on today? Either in your personal life that you do a shout out, or you might know somebody famous who has a birthday today. Well, I've got a few of them. And so, let's see, I've got 7 birthdays today.
In this church?
No, not in this church.
Oh, one going around.
Yeah, just famous. Candace is not in here to tell me if we have a church birthday today. Trying to think if we had any on Facebook. I can't remember. From inside the church, not that I recall. Anyway, if it's your birthday and you're watching, happy birthday. So I've got a few other happy birthdays to throw out there. On this date in 1936, happy birthday to Wilt Chamberlain, basketball player.
Yay.
He was born in Philadelphia. He died in 1999. Also, maybe a little bit better known to people in this church, 1938, happy birthday to Kenny Rogers, country singer.
I like Kenny.
You like Kenny?
Yeah, I know him, but
Do we have any church birthdays that you're aware of? No? Okay. Anyway, Kenny Rogers was born in Houston, Texas on this date. He died in 2020. 1957, happy birthday to Kim Sledge. She is 67 years old, of Sister Sledge. Y'all remember what she sang?
Nope.
You don't?
What is Sister Sledge?
I don't remember the
We are family.
I
We
thought that
are
was the sisters,
family. Sister Sledge.
but I thought
And
it
she-
was somebody else.
Oh, okay. Nope, that was them. But she also was born in Philadelphia on this date. 1959, happy birthday to Jim McMahon. And most of y'all don't know who that is, but my brother will know who it is. He was,
That is.
you do know?
Yeah, he the sweepstake guy?
No, that's Ed McMahon. No, Jim McMahon was he was the quarterback of the greatest football team to ever take the field, 1985 Chicago Bears. So anyway, also you probably don't know who this is, but you know his work. 1961, happy birthday to Steven Hillenburg. So he's 63 years old today. He is a cartoonist, and you've probably heard of SpongeBob SquarePants. That's him. So anyway.
you can't raise kids and not know SpongeBob.
Well, we didn't introduce our kids to him, but whatever. But anyway, he was born on this date in Lawton, Oklahoma. 1986, happy birthday to Usain Bolt. Probably the fastest man, at least I ever saw. He was nuts. He's 38 years old today. He was born in Jamaica and represented them at the Olympics. And then more modern country, if you can call it that. It's not really country, but whatever. 1988, happy birthday to Casey Musgraves. She's 36 years old today. She was born in Golden, Texas. So my kids are a fan. That's the only reason I know her. I've got one death to report, and only because it's interesting. You don't even know who she is. On this date in 1614, Elizabeth Bathory died. No idea who that is, I don't bet. She was a countess in Hungary, and she is well known for being the most prolific female serial killer in history. Yeah.
And you want us to
Yeah,
know that?
she was a countess, yeah. She killed like hundreds of women and children.
Oh, man.
So, anyway. She died. She was 54 when she died. All right, so none of that's fun. But anyway, a few events in history that I thought were interesting. In 1831, if you know your history, and you maybe you don't, this was Nat Turner's Rebellion. You familiar with Nat Turner's Rebellion? Took place in Virginia, 1831. He was a slave, and it was a slavery uprising to to abolish slavery or whatever. And they killed about 50 white people. And so, in order to get them back, the white people killed about 200 slaves. So, yeah. But anyway, it was famous. It was a famous rebellion. Not pleasant, but kind of a blight on our history. But anyway, well known, 1831, this date. 10 years later, 1841. Oh, I meant to not tell you the date because I thought it was interesting that it happened so early. John Hampton patents the Venetian blind. Who knew? Yeah, that long ago. I did not know. Before the Civil War.
I was born.
So-
Oh, it was before the Civil War?
Yeah, I don't think you were born. I mean, you've been around a while, but not that long. So, anyway.
I have been around a while.
On this date in 1942, Disney released Bambi.
Worst
So-
movie ever.
Wow.
I hate that movie. I hate it with a passion.
Why? Just because she's left alone? Is it he or she? Is it a boy or a
The
girl?
only good thing about that movie is Thumper. Everything else is boring or awful. One or the other. Thumper is the only good thing about it.
Okay, nice to know. And 19 on this date in 1959, Hawaii becomes the 50th state in the United States. 1987, Dirty Dancing is released. If you like that movie, I wasn't a big fan of it, but whatever. Yeah, nobody, I mean, there was a little bit of fighting, but it wasn't even worth talking about. But something that is kind of up my alley that y'all probably don't care anything about, but it just totally fascinates me. On this date in 1989, Voyager 2 begins the flyby of Neptune. How are we even able to send something out that far? It makes no sense to me. And this was, you're talking 89, you're talking what, 35 years ago now? We were able to fly by Neptune? It makes no sense to me.
Maybe it was kind of a long way.
I just don't see how we're able to even keep contact with that kind of thing and program it to do that. It just fascinates me. But anyway. Okay. Well, this is our first Bible study back. We started last week. We had a West Virginia update on their mission trip there, so that was cool. And but tonight we are getting back in our study of the book of Revelation. Now, for those of you who were here for the last study that we had, which was back in June, it was midway through June, we did a kind of a recap on where we had been and really kind of tie things up to where we were at that point. And where we had left off, if you want to take out your Bible, you can, but you don't have to, because I'm doing the same thing tonight, but for a different reason. This last time we got through chapter 9, Revelation chapter 9, in our study. We had started, we started back in the fall. We started almost a year ago in this study. I don't remember exactly when it was, but almost a year ago. And we have finally made it through chapter 9. I could have gone faster, but those who were in that study requested that we talk about details. And so I could have gone slower too. I mean, I've done it before. But, so we're covering some details, but we're trying to go fast enough where people don't get like really bogged down and too bored in it. But we've made it through Revelation chapter 9, which is basically the sixth trumpet judgment. And so what I want to do tonight is I'm trying to help people who are interested in getting into this study, but there's something in their minds that say, well, you've already gone through this much, And I don't want to just jump in the middle of a study because I've actually had people who've told me that here, like in the study. Now, just turns out they went ahead and jumped in anyway, which I appreciated. But I want to help people who are jumping in the middle, but they don't want to feel like they're lost, like they're kind of clueless as to what's going on. And so I'm going to give a recap again tonight about what Revelation 1 through 9 is about, and I'm going to be able to do that in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, like whatever pace y'all dictate. So we've got some people who are watching online, and what I want you to do is, whether you're in the room or whether you're watching online, I want you to think of questions that you might have. And I'll be able to incorporate that because, again, I can go as fast or as slow. I mean, I could cover the entire book in 10 minutes. I've done that in the Sunday school class before. But I want to know kind of what is the, like, if I go through it, what will I have missed? What question do you want answered that I did not answer in the recap? And that will conclude our night. And then next week, we're going to jump back in Revelation chapter 10. And yeah, that's what we're going to do. So, y'all ready?
A lot of people are gonna miss a lot of this stuff tonight.
Yep. Well, and I hope that, I hope those who are missing were here for most of the study up to this point so that they don't need the recap. But I know, like, Netflix is so annoying now. Because what they do is they'll put out a series, you know, Cobra Kai is a perfect example, because they're doing that right now. Yellowstone, if you followed Yellowstone, that's not Netflix, but Yellowstone is another example. They'll do the series, and they'll follow through the series, and then they'll come up to a break, and they'll take like a year to put out the next series, the next installment of the series, and by that time you forgot what you're talking about. So even if they have been through this whole thing, chances are there's some things they had forgotten, which I hope I'm going to kind of cover tonight. So anyway, all right. So we'll get to the board in just a second. Well, maybe I should go ahead and start this. We're doing this very loosely, okay? The preachers who used to like never ever be prepared, they would say, "I'm just going to go as the Spirit leads," you know. So I'm prepared, but I'm fluid. Let's put it that way. So I think I will go ahead and bring out the board. For those of you who are watching online, it may be a little bit difficult to see this, but I hope not. I hope not. So I've got it big, and I'll try to write it big, okay? So I'm going to give you a quick timeline to get you up to where we are, to where Revelation begins. And, since we're talking about history, we're not going to put an arrow there. We'll put a beginning. There is a beginning to history, and that is the book of Genesis, of course, and there's no end to go. I guess there will be an end to history at one point, but that's beside the point. Okay, so we start off, and this is the Old Testament. Now, this is a timeline that is not to scale, but this is a timeline of all of history right here. And so, for the sake of space, I'm not doing this to scale, but you have the Old Testament from the beginning till the end period of the Old Testament. And in the Old Testament, the primary platform through which God spoke and worked in the world was a people. And it's the nation of Israel. It's the Jewish people. So, if God had, that says Israel, for those of you who can't see, if God had a message or if there was something He wanted to do, He usually did it. Not always, but usually, as a general rule, He did it through the people of Israel, through the Jewish people. That period comes to an end. There is an intertestamental period, a period between the testaments that's approximately 430 years, something like that. But then we jump to the New Testament. And that's where we read all the stories about Jesus and him being here. The New Testament period is around 100 years old. It lasts for about 100 years. Now here's where we come up with that. Jesus was born probably in 4 BC, somewhere around there. And the book of Revelation, John penned that sometime in the mid-90s. And I don't mean the 1990s. I mean 90s. So you're looking at roughly a 100-year period that the New Testament was in play. At the end of that, we enter into a new phase in history that has been given several different names by people who are a lot smarter than I am. Some people call it the Age of Grace. That's a good name. Paul, the Apostle Paul, so you can't go wrong with this because it's biblical. He calls it the Age of the Gentiles. My handwriting is excellent for those of you who can't see. I have a different. Okay, we back up? Check, check.
Nobody's saying anything yet.
Nobody? Oh, but they were saying that we were.
Yeah, they were saying we were without sound.
Okay, I think we should be good now. It's registering on here anyway.
Okay.
So, okay.
Yeah, the bad thing is I don't know where you were when you lost sound,
Yes, I can't see either.
but they're saying you're back up.
Okay. Okay, so what I was saying is that there are some people who, when you talk about the rapture, they'll say, well, I don't believe in the rapture. And the people who do believe in the rapture will say, well, you should read your Bible then. Well, let me just assure you, there are people who know their Bible very, very well, and they don't believe in the rapture. I think that there's good reason to believe in it, and so I do, and that's what I teach, okay? But we talked about that a long time ago. I can send you that Bible study. I've got it in print, and I can send it to you if you want it electronically. So just let us know, contact us in the office, we'll send it to you. But anyway, so the rapture is going to happen, and some people who don't believe in the rapture, they'll say, well, the word rapture is not in the Bible. And they are true. That is true. The word rapture, you will not find it. It is our term for this event that is going to take place. Because the word Trinity is not in the Bible either. That doesn't mean it's not true. It is. So the rapture is going to take place. And at that moment in time, the entire church, everybody who is saved at that moment in time, will be removed from the earth and taken to be with Christ in heaven. So you can imagine all the chaos that will be accompanying some kind of a departure like that. And so when that happens, it's going to usher in a new day that's going to be absolutely nuts. I mean, the world is going to go crazy. You think it's crazy now. It is nothing compared to what it will be. And here's why. Jesus said, you are the salt of the earth. And we use that term, we use that phrase in a lot of different ways. And I've heard some preachers, man, they've preached long messages, on different uses of salt and all that kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. They're good messages, and they can encourage us to do certain things. But back then, salt wasn't primarily about taste. It was about preservation, because they didn't have freezers like we do now. And so it was a preservative. And so basically, the church is the protective element that keeps God from coming and totally obliterating everyone. And so you can imagine at that moment in time when the church is removed from the earth, for just a moment, there'll be not a single saved person on planet Earth. And so that is going to usher in a period of extreme chaos and judgment, and I'm not using this phrase lightly, hell on earth. And that is the time that we know of as the tribulation. And so I've got this whole point. When you start talking about the book of Revelation, when people want to study that and they want to learn what's going to happen through the book of Revelation, it's normally talking about this. It is usually talking about, tell me what's going to happen when the tribulation occurs. And honestly, that is the biggest portion of the book. From chapter, 1, 2, and 3. When you start chapter 4, that's kind of the preliminary. This is what's going on in heaven as he's getting ready to unleash his punishment upon the earth. So it starts in chapter 4, and it goes all the way through chapter 19. So the bulk of the book is talking about the unfolding of this horrible 7-year period. And that's the thing about the tribulation is, it is a 7-year period. There are people who ask, is it literally 7 years? And there are a lot of people who say no, because 7 is it oftentimes signifies perfection or completion. And so they would say that 7 years is not a literal time period, it's just the time period that God is going to use to complete His judgment on the earth. Legit. That's a good argument. However, when you go back to the book of Daniel, when you look at Ezekiel, when you look at Matthew, when you look at the Thessalonians, when you look at the book of Revelation, it continually uses the phrase, it uses something that is pointing towards 7 years, whether it's talking about days or whether it's talking about months or whether it's talking about years, it always comes back to the 7-year period. And so a good rule of thumb when you are translating or when you're interpreting Scripture is to take it literally unless it gives you a reason not to. And there have been plenty of times as we've worked through this study just in the first 9 chapters where it was obvious that what he was talking about was symbolic for something else. But in this case, when you're talking about this time period, because all of these different writers, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, have continually talked about a 7-year period, it only makes sense to assume that it's going to be a literal 7 years. So, again, we get to heaven and they're like, God's like, obviously it wasn't supposed to be 7 years. It was something. Okay, fine, that's fine. Sue me, all right? But everything seems to point toward the fact that we're talking about a literal 7-year period. So that's how we're teaching this book, okay? Now, as we get to the actual book itself, Revelation chapter 1, Revelation chapter 1 and in verse 19, it gives us the outline for the book. And this is the outline that we have used, okay, as we've studied through. And here's what Jesus said. These are the words of Jesus. It says, therefore, write the things, he's talking to John, who wrote it, write the things which you have seen, and the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. So, that is the outline. And here's how it follows. The things which you have seen, that is chapter 1. Okay? The things which are, those are the letters to the 7 churches of Revelation. Maybe you've heard of that phrase, 7 churches of Revelation, Ephesians, Thessalonica, so on and so forth. And that's chapters 2 and 3. So those are the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things which will take place after these things. That's chapter 4 through the end of the book. Okay? And that's what makes it so difficult, because these things we haven't seen. I mean, we know that the 7 churches were historical churches. They were in historical cities that we know things about. We've uncovered archaeological finds on all those. Those things we can look back and we can make sense out of those. But what is to come, that's what makes it so hard, because we haven't seen that. In fact, as John is writing these things down, things which are to come, he's envisioning things that he has no correlation for. If he's like, think about your grandparents, okay? Your grandparents who have already gone on to be with the Lord, okay? Try explaining to them the internet. If they were to try to describe the internet, they wouldn't have any point of reference to go by. And so you think about somebody who lived think about George Washington and him trying to explain an airplane. Well, he's looking at that thing, or a helicopter. He's looking at that thing up in the air and it's kind of floating up in the air, and he's got this vision of a helicopter. How's he going to explain that? He's got no point of reference to be able to explain that to the people that he's seeing. Well, that's John. He's seeing this stuff, and even he's like, what is that? That's kind of crazy. So he's doing the best that he can to explain it, and that's why some of the language in there is odd. So let me try to put it in simple terms. Chapters 4 and 5 are a huge worship service that takes place in heaven. And it's a precursor to God's judgment on the earth. They've been like, all of history has been waiting for him to do this thing, like, let's make this thing right. Why do evil people seem to prosper, and why is there so much evil in the world, and why isn't God doing anything about it? Those are the questions that we raise today, and God is going to answer those. Now, Peter answered those. He said, God's patience means that he's encouraging people to be saved. But understand that patience is going to come to an end, and he's going to bring judgment. Well, the book of Revelation is explaining what that judgment will look like. And so there's this big worship service for 2 chapters. It's huge, it's grand, it's glorious. but it's in preparation for the unleashing of God's judgment. When you get to chapter 6, that's where most people want to begin their study. That's what they're really most interested in, because now the judgments are going to unfold, and they start out with what we know of as the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Okay? So let me put this in general terms where we can make sense out of this, so that if you go through and read, you'll be able to see how this thing is unfolding on your own. All right. So we have these judgments, and there are going to be 21 judgments. 3 sets of 7. So again, you see that 7 that we're talking about? Completion, perfection, and those kinds of things. There are going to be 3 sets of 7 judgments. 21 altogether. All right? 3 times 7, 21, right? You with me? Okay. So the first ones are the trumpet judgments. And there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's stop there for just a second. Here is the general pattern for the judgments that we see in the book of Revelation, for these 21 judgments. They are going to start out kind of slow, and they're going to start out, I hate to say not as bad, but that might be true. They start out like really bad, and they're going to go from bad to worse. That's how we explain stuff, right? So it's going to start off a little bit less frequent and a little bit lighter bad. I don't know how else to say it. To the point that here is right here in that 7 year time frame of the tribulation, we're going to hit the halfway point right here. The first set of judgments. We're only going to get through the first, no. No, that's incorrect. It is, yes, it's tearing apart. It is going to be, yeah, right, okay, sorry. It is going to be after the 5th trumpet judgment, okay? So this is going to be the halfway point of the tribulation. The halfway point of the tribulation, Paul talks about that in the Thessalonians, in his letter to the Thessalonians, when he talks about the abomination of desolation, where the Antichrist is going to ascend to the throne. He's going to allow the temple to be rebuilt. He's going to allow the Jews to carry on with their religion of sacrifice and those kind of things. They'll have a high holy seat, a temple that is reserved only for God. And at the halfway point of the tribulation, 3.5 years in, he is going to break his truce with the Jewish people, and he is going to ascend to the throne in the temple, the great abomination to the Jewish people. And so, for 3.5 years, we'll experience, well, not we, but the earth will experience 5 of the 21 judgments. And after that, the last 3.5 years is going to be all the rest crammed in, and they'll become more frequent and they'll become more intense. So, 3.5 years, 3.5 years, the trumpet judgments, the first 5, 6, and then the 7th trumpet is going to be something that is going to be very interesting. And that is a whole new set of judgments. Wait, I've said this wrong. Oh my goodness, what is wrong with me? These are the seals, are first. The 7th seal is going to unleash the 7 trumpet judgments. Now, before you get weirded out by that, I was thinking of, because I thought of different illustrations when we were first going through this, but I got another one in case you were there and you're bored with the old illustrations. I've got another one for you. Let's just say that you're walking in, Thailand, okay, or Pakistan or something like that, and you're going through a cave, and you come across a a lamp, and you were like, hey, what's in the lamp? And all of a sudden a genie pops out and says, hello, I'm here to give you your 3 wishes. And so what are your 3 wishes? And so the first wish, you're like, well, hey, I want to be healthy or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Second one, I want to be rich. All right, granted, great. And then the third wish, he's like, okay, so what's your third wish? And you say, I want my third wish to be 3 more wishes. Smart, right? That's what you do if you're smart. That's kind of what's happening here. We go through 6 sealed judgments, and they're terrible. I mean, you've got warfare, and you've got famine, and you've got death, and those kinds of things. It's terrible. It's awful. When you get to the 7th trumpet, when it opens up, it's 7 more judgments. Okay? And these judgments are called the 7 trumpet judgments. Now, I'm going to kind of give you a heads up, because we have, by the time we get to the end of chapter 9, we are making it through 6 of these trumpet judgments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, in the middle of the telling of these judgments that we have seen so far through chapter 9, there are a couple of what we call interludes. And these are some chapters that John has written down that kind of back up, and they say, okay, meanwhile back at the ranch. Meanwhile, while all these things are unfolding, here's something else that is going on. And I think that's kind of what throws some people off, is that there's these telling of, here are judgments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And all of a sudden it's like, well, let's talk about something else for a second. Well, wait, why are we suddenly talking about something else? And it's because he's taking some time to talk about, here are some other things that are going on while these things are happening. And so then he starts back up. He says, okay, well, here's the seventh seal. Here are more judgments. And we'll go through the 6 trumpet judgments. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now we have stopped at the end of chapter 9, and that's where we have left off. That's where things have ended. And again, you can go through and read all those with this understanding in mind. Now, what's about to happen is we are at the end of chapter 9. When we get into chapter 10, there's going to be what, 2, 3? There's going to be several more chapters that are going to be devoted to that same idea of meanwhile back at the ranch. While we've been talking about these things, there are some other things that have been going on as well that I want to tell you about. And so that's how that's going to unfold. And then when we get to the 7th trumpet, when that's once again reinstated, the 7th trumpet is going to do that exact same thing. It's going to be the genie in the bottle. When he gets to the 3rd wish and you ask for 3 more, he's going to get to the 7th trumpet. And when that thing's opened, we're going to be introduced to another whole set of judgments called the bowl judgments. And these are going to be the worst of the worst. And they're going to unfold one right on top of another, as if things weren't bad enough already. There's already been human conflict. There's been all this stuff going on in the cosmos. There's been earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. There have been showers, meteor showers that have come down and have pelted people and have made water not worth drinking. It kills animals and kills people it kills sea creatures and those kinds of things. And then, if those things aren't bad enough, there is actually an unleashing of demonic activity that has been held captive for thousands of years, and they will be released to do damage to people who are left on the earth. From every angle that you can think of, this is the worst of the worst. And that's what makes this tribulation so terrible. And so, of course, there are some people who don't want to talk about this kind of thing because it is frightening. And if it's not somewhat frightening or repelling or horrible to you, it's only because you don't understand what you're reading. You haven't gotten a deep enough glimpse into the horrific judgments that will be poured out on the earth. And so some people don't want to talk about it, and that's not really how we should respond either, because we are told that it was given to us so that we could study it, and so that we could see what is coming. Number one, so that we can be thankful that we don't have to deal with it, that we don't have to go through it. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. There is the rapture that will take us out of here. But also, I think it is a call to us to evangelize, to do the thing that we are most hesitant to do. And that is to see other people escape this horrible, horrible occurrence that is going to come to those who don't know Jesus. And which kind of leads me into really something specific for Emmanuel Baptist Church. And again, I know that there are some people from other churches who watch this, and it certainly applies to you as well. But specifically for our church, we have this wild card challenge that we have going on. We're supposed to pass out 5,000 cards in our community, and it's because we want to see them reached with the gospel. And just to be honest, I don't know how else to say it. I hate to be Debbie Downer, but we are doing horribly. I mean, horribly. We haven't given out. We've been in this thing for 2 weeks now, and we haven't given out 200 cards yet out of 5,000. Not even 200. And I think that a study of the book of Revelation is there for us to help light a fire within us to say time is short, and when that time runs out, things will happen that we don't want to. Literally, people say this, we literally don't want happening to our worst enemy. It's going to be that bad. And so we need to be about the business of providing rescue for people. And of course, Wild Card Challenge, I mean, that's not the end all. I mean, it's just one expression of that urgency that we should have. So anyway, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that your church is doing when it comes to outreach, you need to get behind that. And at the expense of everything else. If there's nothing else that you do at that church, it should come before everything other than, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it should come before everything else other than the corporate worship time that you have. It's more important than anything else that you do as a church. So do that. Do that. Okay, there is your recap. And man, it went longer than I thought, which is kind of normal for me. So anyway, if you got any questions, go ahead and put them there in the comment section, and I'll do the best that I can. I don't want to get bogged down in details, simply because although I guess I could. Maybe, okay, if it's something that's very detailed, maybe that'll be how we begin next week. Help me remember that next week, that we're going to take questions on details